My wife screamed at me when she was caught pregnant, drinking, and with another man at a party. It was just one cocktail. Stop being paranoid. He's just a friend. I smiled calmly and said, Great, because tomorrow we'll know if it's my child. My name's Diego Morales. I'm 38 years old, and I thought I had everything under control. I run 3 fast food restaurants in Madrid, a business I built from scratch with effort and sleepless nights. My wife, Lucia, 35 years old, is 6 months pregnant with our second child. We have a daughter, Sofia, 15 years old, and an older son, Pablo, 20, from her first marriage. We live in a house in the suburbs, the dream of any family. But 3 months ago something changed. Lucia began to act strangely. Evasive answers. The mobile phone always face down. More frequent outings without explanation. She told me it was the pregnancy, and I wanted to believe her. I always trusted her. I was never one to check or doubt without reason. But my instinct, sharpened by years of dealing with suppliers and employees, warned me that something did not fit. Everything exploded on a Tuesday night. There was a problem with a supplier at my restaurant in Seoul, and I thought I would be there until late, but I managed to solve it earlier and decided to surprise Lucia with paella from her favorite restaurant. I arrived home at 8 p.m. The house was dark, in an unsettling silence. I could not hear the TV or Sophia's music. I went up to her room, empty. I called Lucia, but she did not answer. My heart was beating hard. Something was wrong. Then I saw her mobile phone, unlocked, on the kitchen table. I had never invaded her privacy, but that night I could not resist. A WhatsApp message hit me like a punch. Lucia, you were incredible at the party last night. Javi could not take his eyes off you. Party. Javi. I kept looking with a racing pulse. I found photos, a house full of strangers, drinks everywhere, and, in the center, Lucia, pregnant, hugging a man I did not know. In another picture, she was holding a glass of wine, laughing as if she had no responsibilities. My wife, 6 months pregnant, drinking and flirting. I scrolled down the chat with trembling hands. A video showed her dancing, stumbling slightly, laughing too loudly. The comments were worse. What a night, Lucia. Javi says he wants to do it again. My head was a whirlwind. Who was Javi? Why did I not know anything about that party? Then I heard the door. I put the mobile phone away and pretended to check an invoice. Lucia came in with wet hair and shoes in her hand. She smelled of alcohol. She looked at me surprised and said she had been having dinner with friends at Marta's house, that it was nothing special. Her voice trembled. Her eyes avoided mine. I could not hold back. I confronted her with what I had seen. The photos, the wine, Javi. Her face turned pale, but she tried to turn the situation around, accusing me of invading her privacy. She said it was just one drink, that Javi was just a friend, that I was being paranoid. But I was not going to let her manipulate me. I have dealt with liars at work. I know when someone is trying to dodge the truth. I told her that the next day we would go to the doctor for a full checkup for the baby and a paternity test. Her eyes filled with panic, but she did not back down. She insisted that I was exaggerating, that there was nothing to hide. I barely slept that night. Lucia locked herself in the guest room, and I stayed staring at the ceiling, going over every lie. The next morning, the drive to the clinic was a deathly silence. In the waiting room, surrounded by happy couples, we did not look at each other. Dr. Ramirez, our regular doctor, explained the procedure, a prenatal checkup and a non-invasive paternity test with a blood sample from Lucia and a swab from me. The results would arrive in a week. The ultrasound showed the baby was healthy, moving, but I felt no joy, only distrust. Lucia cried silently, but her tears did not move me. She had crossed a line. That week was unbearable. The tension at home was palpable. Sofia, who noticed the atmosphere, cornered me one night in my office. She wanted to know what was going on. I did not want to involve her, but she is smart and is not easily fooled. I told her the basics, that Lucia had gone to a party without telling me, that she was drinking and close to a man named Javi. I showed her a photo, Lucia with a glass, Javi's arm around her waist. Sofia froze with a mix of disappointment and rage. She asked me what I was going to do, and I told her I was waiting for the results to decide. Lucia interrupted us, furious that I had spoken with Sofia. She tried to blame me for involving our daughter, but I made it clear that she made this public with her photos and lies. Sofia, with a maturity that surprised me, confronted her. asking why she was lying if she had done nothing wrong. Lucia did not answer and left, slamming the door. The following days were an agonizing wait until the message from Dr. Ramirez arrived. The results were ready. The message from Dr. Ramirez arrived like a thunderclap in the midst of the storm that my life already was. The results of the paternity test were ready, and every minute until that appointment seemed eternal. During that week, the house had become a silent battlefield. Lucia barely spoke to me, locked in her role as a victim. I immersed myself in work, checking accounts and supervising the restaurants, but my mind did not rest. The images of Lucia with Javi, laughing, drinking, repeated like an endless loop. I could not get that glass of wine in her hand or his arm around her out of my head. Was it just a friendship, as she insisted, or was there something more? My instinct told me it was not that simple. Sophia, my daughter, had become my anchor. At 15, she showed a strength I did not expect. One night, while I was reviewing invoices, she sat with me and asked me directly if I thought Mom had cheated on me. I did not want to lie to her. I told her that the photos and messages pointed to something more than a simple outing with friends. Sophia pressed her lips together with a mixture of sadness and rage. She told me that she had always admired her mother, but now she did not know what to think. Her words hurt me, but they also gave me clarity. I could not continue to ignore the truth for the sake of the family. On the day of the appointment with Dr. Ramirez, the drive to the clinic was another heavy silence. Lucia looked out the window with her hands clasped in her lap. I drove, trying to stay calm, but my heart was pounding. In the office, the doctor received us with his usual professionalism. He opened an envelope and read the results in a neutral voice. The test confirmed that I was the biological father of the baby. I felt an immediate relief, but not joy. The baby was mine, yes, but that did not erase the lies or the betrayal. Lucia let out a sigh as if she had won something, but she said nothing. Neither did I. I thanked the doctor, and we left. Back at home, I thought the truth about the paternity would close a wound, but it only opened another. I checked Lucia's mobile phone again, unable to trust her words. I found more messages with Javi, not just from the night of the party, but from weeks before. They talked about meeting again, about how special their connection was, about how Lucia felt misunderstood in our marriage. There was no proof of a physical affair, but the words distilled an intimacy that cut me like a knife. It was an emotional affair, and that hurt as much as any other betrayal. I confronted Lucia that same night. I showed her the messages and asked for an explanation. She tried to defend herself by saying that Javi was just a friend who listened to her, that it meant nothing, but each excuse sounded more hollow than the last. I told her I could not go on like this, that her lies and her behavior had broken something that could not be repaired. I mentioned divorce for the first time. Her face fell, but there were no tears this time, only a look of resignation. She accused me of being inflexible, of not giving her a chance, but I knew she had had her chance for months, every time she chose to lie to me. The following days were a whirlwind. I spoke with a lawyer to understand my options. He recommended I document everything, the photos, the messages, any evidence of her behavior. He also warned me that the process would be tough, especially with a baby on the way, but there was no turning back. Sophia, upon hearing my decision, supported me without hesitation. She told me I deserved respect, that I should not tolerate Mom's lies. Pablo, on the other hand, stayed on the sidelines, caught between his loyalty to his mother and his discomfort with the situation. One night, while reviewing more messages on Lucia's mobile phone, I discovered something new, a conversation with her friend Marta, where she admitted that she had felt trapped in our marriage and that Javi offered her a way out. It was not just one night of partying, it was a pattern of deceit that had been going on for months. I decided that I would not only seek a divorce, but I would fight for shared custody of the baby. I was not going to let Lucia push me away from my child, nor let her decisions jeopardize his well-being. The tension at home was unbearable. Lucia tried to act as if nothing had happened, preparing breakfast or talking about trivial things, but I could no longer pretend. With each passing day, my determination grew. It was not about revenge, but about protecting what was left of my family and my dignity. The test results had confirmed that the baby was mine, but they had also shown me something more important, that I could not trust the woman I once loved. The days following the confrontation with Lucia were a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. I had made the decision to move forward with the divorce, but the reality of dismantling 8 years of marriage was not simple. My lawyer guided me through the initial steps, gathering evidence, preparing documents, and planning for the custody of the baby who had not yet been born. Every night after closing the restaurant, I would sit down to review the messages and photos I had saved, making sure I had everything necessary to protect my rights as a father. It was not about punishing Lucia, but about ensuring a stable future for my son and for Sophia. Lucia, for her part, oscillated between denial and attempts at reconciliation. One morning, while I was making coffee, she asked me to consider couples therapy. She said we could still save our relationship, that her mistakes were not that serious, but her words sounded empty. The messages with Javi, her friend Marta, and other contacts revealed a truth I could not ignore. Lucia had been planning a parallel life, one where I did not fit in. It was not just the party or the alcohol, it was the intention behind her actions, the lack of respect for our family. Sophia became my biggest support. At 15, she showed a maturity that surprised me. One afternoon, while we were reviewing the menu of one of the restaurants together, she told me she did not want me to give up. She confessed that she had heard Lucia talking on the phone with Javi, laughing and making plans to see him again. That revelation was another blow. Not only had she lied once, she was still in contact with him, even after our fight. Sophia asked me not to tell her that she had told me, and I promised to protect her. But that night, when I confronted Lucia with this new information, she did not deny it. She just looked down and said she needed space to feel free. It was the last straw. I decided to speed up the legal process. My lawyer filed a preliminary divorce petition, citing irreconcilable differences in Lucia's irresponsible behavior. I also requested an evaluation of the risks of her alcohol consumption during pregnancy. Although Dr. Ramirez had confirmed that the baby was healthy so far, I did not want to take any more risks. Meanwhile, I remained calm at home for Sophia's sake. Pablo, who had been distant, finally spoke to me. He told me he respected my decision, but that it hurt him to see his mother so lost. I assured him that I was not trying to destroy her, only to protect what was left of our family. A week later, I received an unexpected message from Marta, Lucia's friend. She wanted to talk. We met at a cafe near Gran Via. Marta seemed nervous, but she was direct. Lucia had confessed to her that her friendship with Javi had crossed boundaries. There were no physical details, but there was an emotional connection that she herself did not know how to handle. Marta apologized for not telling me anything sooner and warned me that Javi was still insisting on contacting Lucia. I thanked her, but her words only reinforced my decision. I could not live with someone who not only lied, but continued to nurture a relationship that put everything we had built at risk. When I returned home, I found Lucia reviewing papers at the kitchen table. She looked at me and for the first time did not try to justify anything. She just said she was looking for a job, aware that the divorce would change her financial situation. I did not feel pity. Her decisions had led her to that point. I told her she could stay in the house until the baby was born, but afterward we would sell it and divide the assets. There were no screams or tears this time, just a cold acceptance of reality. As the days passed, I focused on my restaurants and on Sophia. She began to spend more time with me at work, learning about the business and showing an interest that filled me with pride. But every night, when I closed my eyes, the image of Lucia with Javi returned. It was not just the pain of betrayal, it was the certainty that, regardless of the paternity test results, our trust was broken forever. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: I would not compromise my self-respect or the well-being of my children for anyone. The divorce process moved forward like an unstoppable machine, but each step forced me to face the reality of what I had lost. It was not just my marriage, it was the idea of the perfect family I had built in my head. As I organized the legal documents with my lawyer, I focused on maintaining stability for Sophia and the baby who would soon be born. My restaurants remained my refuge, a place where I could control something amidst the chaos. Every night, upon closing the sole location, I found a strange peace in the routine, checking inventory, adjusting menus, motivating the team. But upon returning home, the tension with Lucia was a constant reminder of the rift that had opened between us. Lucia had stopped trying to convince me to reconcile. Instead, she threw herself into preparing for the future. She started working part-time at a store, something she had never done during our marriage. She would not admit it, but she knew the divorce would force her to fend for herself. I felt no satisfaction in her struggle, only a cold resignation. She had chosen this path with every lie, every message to Javi, every decision that put our child at risk. Sometimes I would catch myself looking at her as she prepared dinner or talked with Sophia, wondering how we had come to this. But those doubts would disappear when I remembered the messages I still saved on my phone, proof of her emotional betrayal. Sophia, meanwhile, grew closer to me. She would spend afternoons helping me at the restaurant, learning to manage the ordering system or chatting with the employees. One night, as we were counting the cash register, she confessed that she had found more messages from Javi on Lucia's mobile phone, sent after our last argument. They were not explicit, but they made it clear that he had not given up on her. I told Sophia not to worry, that I would take care of protecting our family, but deep down, the anger was growing. It was not just because of Lucia, but because of the audacity of Javi, a man who knew she was married and pregnant and still kept insisting. I contacted my lawyer to add a clause to the divorce agreement. I wanted an order that would restrict Lucia's contact with Javi while the baby was under her care. I had no proof of a physical danger, but I was not willing to let that man near my child. My lawyer warned me it would be difficult to get, but we included it as part of the negotiation. When Lucia found out, she did not protest. She just nodded as if she knew she had no arguments to defend herself. One morning, while checking the mail, I received a notification from the hospital. Lucia had gone into labor a little earlier than expected. I rushed to the clinic, not for her, but for my son. When I arrived, the delivery had already begun. I was by her side, not out of love, but out of the commitment of being a father. Seeing my son, Alvaro, being born was a moment that should have been of pure joy, but it was tinged with sadness. He was mine, no doubt, but he carried the weight of everything that had happened. When I held him for the first time, I knew I would do anything for him, no matter the cost. After the birth, Lucia and I agreed to a temporary truce for Alvaro's sake. She stayed in the house with the baby while I moved into an apartment near the Soul restaurant. Sophia divided her time between us, but she spent more nights with me, helping me adapt to this new life. The divorce continued its course, and although Alvaro's birth brought a moment of calm, it did not change my decision. Lucia had broken our trust, and there was no going back. Every day, as I held my son or worked in my restaurants, I felt I was rebuilding something new, something that depended only on me and my children. The months following Alvaro's birth marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The divorce was finalized on a cold spring morning in my lawyer's office, where I signed the papers that dissolved 8 years of marriage. Lucia did not try to stop me this time. She had accepted that there was no going back. The house was sold, and we divided the assets equally. I made sure that Alvaro had everything he needed, from a crib to a fund for his future, but my relationship with Lucia was reduced to the bare essentials: custody schedules and decisions about our son. Every exchange was cold, functional, as if we were strangers. I settled permanently in an apartment near the Soul restaurant, a small place, but big enough for me, Sophia, and Alvaro's visits. The restaurants continued to thrive, and work became my anchor. I threw myself into expanding the business, opening a 4th location in Chambéry, a project that gave me a renewed purpose. Sophia, who was now 16, became even more involved in the business, learning to manage orders and even suggesting ideas for the menu. Her support was a reminder that, despite everything, my family was still my priority. Pablo, for his part, moved into his own apartment after getting a job at a bank. He visited me often, and, although he never talked much about his mother, he once told me that he respected my decision to set boundaries. His words gave me peace. Knowing that he did not judge me was a relief. Lucia found a stable job in a clothing store, but her life was not the same. The sale of the house forced her to move into a smaller apartment, and, although she tried to maintain a facade of normality, Sophia told me that she sometimes found her distant, trapped in her own thoughts. I did not feel satisfaction in her situation, only a certainty. Her decisions had led her there. One afternoon, while I was walking with Alvaro in El Retiro, I ran into Javi in a nearby supermarket. He recognized me and, nervously, tried to apologize. He said he did not know Lucia was married at first and that it had all been a misunderstanding. I did not believe him. I told him that Lucia was free now, but that if she lied to a husband, she would probably do it to the next one. He left without answering, and I never heard from him again. Alvaro grew up healthy and strong, and every moment with him reinforced my commitment to be the best father possible. I shared custody with Lucia, making sure to be present for every milestone. His first steps, his first words. Sofia became a protective sister, and together we built a new routine, one that did not depend on Lucia's lies. Sometimes I would look at my children and feel a mixture of pride and pain. I had lost the dream of a perfect family, but I had gained something more valuable, respect for myself. At 39, my life was not what I had planned. The divorce was hard. Raising a baby with someone I did not trust was a challenge, and starting over was not easy. But every night, when I closed the restaurant and saw Sofia waiting for me to chat, or when I held Alvaro as he fell asleep, I knew I had made the right decision. Lucia's betrayal forced me to face painful truths, but it also taught me that self-respect is non-negotiable. Some boundaries, once crossed, cannot be undone, but life goes on and sometimes it is better than I ever imagined.